This is a review of the DB Tech Compact Foldable Bread Slicer. This bread slicer is made of 100% bamboo. When you open the box, you'll find the breadboard, and this part here is a stabilization board. I've seen several people talking about it, but they really haven't understood yet the total function of it. It helps to hold the side stable, but also acts as a guide to cut the bread to the right thickness. If you set this aside, you can now open up the breadboard, and it pops into place. And as you look at this, you'll see that they lock into place. Here on the end, there are notches, and the side rails lock into place. You then take this board, depending on which thickness of bread you want to cut, you can set the board in place, and it acts as a back for the bread to cut against. It also stabilizes the sides and keeps them from spreading. Here you can see the dimensions, the thickness of these different cutting guides. The spacing is 0.8 centimeters. Here in the middle, it's 1 centimeter. And here on the end, they're 1.2 centimeters. You can also see that there's a slight curve to indicate to you that the thickness is changing from here to here to here. Once you determine what thickness you want to use to cut the bread, if you want to cut it to a medium thickness, for example, you would insert this board in the middle like so. If you want to cut it to a smaller thickness, you would set the board on this end, or the thicker slices at this end. This is just a suggestion that I have in using this product. These knives that you're going to use to cut bread are very sharp and serrated edges. They will cut wood pretty easily. Everybody has a small cutting board, and you can put it in the bottom here, and now it protects the wood and keeps it nice looking. But you're cutting against this cutting board now instead of the wood surface. You can buy these in varying thicknesses so they don't affect the height of the bread that you can fit into here. But this is a very nice way just to protect the unit. Here you can see I have a whole loaf of fresh bread. Of course, this has already been cut, but I just wanted to show you that even a store-bought loaf of bread that's regular size will fit in here, and it's below the edges. If you buy something to put on the bottom, then I'd make sure it was fairly thin. That way you can still get a full loaf of bread in here without any problems. Here you can see the second purpose of this structure here. It's to set the bread against. That way you can always measure the same thickness, and after you cut a couple slices you have to move the bread up. You can simply take out the slices you've cut, store them, and then move the bread up and make sure you cut the same thickness again. Because this is French bread, we use this. We either coat it with an oil and bake it in the oven, or use it for dipping in balsamic vinegar and oil. So I'm going to cut it a little thicker, and then you can see here I'm using 2 slots, and a nice bread knife just goes through this bread pretty easily. I'm going to move this to the side here. What that does is it keeps the bread from moving and makes sure that you're always cutting the same thickness. Now that I've cut 2 pieces, I need to move this up, because if I continue, the pieces are going to get thinner and thinner. I'm going to take these 2 pieces and move to the behind, push this up, and then just start again. Pushing the bread against the edge is an old trick that any construction guy knows, because if you use a miter box, it's much easier to hold an object when it's pushed against the side than it is trying to hold it in the middle, because it's constantly moving. I keep talking about cutting bread, but this thing has a lot of different uses. You can cut bread, French bread, pound cake, pumpkin cake, any kind of specialty bread you want, like banana nut bread. So it's very useful. And this little tray I've stuck in here that you can take out will hold some of the mess, that you can wash this up and clean it up and not have to really wet and get this bamboo bread cutter wet. We don't make a lot of homemade bread, but those that do, if you make it and you want to cut it to exactly the same thickness to make sandwiches, for example, this is a nice way of doing it. You can make sure that your homemade bread will fit in your toaster because you cut it to the right thickness, or your sandwiches are all prepared nicely. It's also nice that when guests come over and you're serving bread, everything looks like it's cut exactly perfectly. It just gives a nice impression. Another nice idea about having the piece in the bottom is now when you take it out, you have a serving tray for the bread. You can just take this to the table if you like. And now you just remove the side panel here and knock a few of the crumbs out. And you can see here on the end, the notches. You push the side forward, it's spring loaded, and you fold these down. Lift it up, fold them back in, and now you're ready to store it again. And here you can see how easy it was, and the bread's just sliced perfectly. This is a very nice product. I rated 5 stars. I think it's a kind of a joke. It's kind of the nicest thing since sliced bread. This review was done by JJ CEO. I'd like to advise you that I received a sample of this product for test and evaluation, and I promised only to provide a fair and honest review.